Hey, my name is Enda Murray. I'm the director of the Irish Film Festival. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Luke McManus, the director of North Circular. Luke, you're very welcome to Sydney.
Thanks very much, Enda. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I really enjoyed North Circular. I'm a Drogheda man myself, but plenty of the family up in Dublin, and spend a lot of time around Phibsborough area. Now, you've lived off the North Circular Road for 2 decades, and I'm just trying to get to the kind of origin of the film. So what struck you as special? I know I've been reading some of the press stuff that you've done. You described it really nicely, but just kind of for the audience here, why did you think it was worth making a film about North Circular Road?
Well, no more than yourself, I'm from Bray originally, so a similar place to Drogheda in many ways. You know, kind of satellite town that's sort of in Dublin, but not in Dublin psychologically. But I moved to this area about 25 years ago and, really embedded myself in it. And one of the things I kind of noticed about the North Circular was just how culturally and historically significant it was, in terms of the institutions that run it. Like, if you include the Phoenix Park, you've Orsa Nuclearon, you have Mountjoy Prison, you have Croke Park, you have Dalymount, you have the Sheriff Street, you have Dublin Port and the Financial Services Centre. You have all these places that have serious iconic resonance, and they're all connected together by this road. So it struck me as an interesting journey to go on cinematically, and there was a few books written in the 90s in London by a crowd of writers like Ian Sinclair and Will Self, and to a lesser extent Peter Ackroyd, and there was a few films made, Psychogeography, which was really about going on a journey, but a physical journey, but you're trying to tell a historic narrative as well. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to do that in Dublin along the North Circular. And I also had this idea that in many ways it's the main street of Ireland, because, you think of Croke Park, people from all around the country come there. You think of Dublin Zoo, nearly everyone in Ireland's been there at some stage of their lives. It's just right beside the start of the North Circular. So it's a place that many, many, many Irish people have been, but very few of them kind of understand or know anything about. So that was kind of the urge. And just...
Oh, I was going to say, you've been. I like your description, of the film as a documentary musical, which was a genre I hadn't come across before. Just tell us about the tone that you were seeking in the film, and how you worked to achieve that.
Right. Well, the idea of a documentary musical is that rather than being a documentary about music or about musicians, you use the music to explore the themes of the documentary, in the same way that, if you're watching a Broadway musical, the song is part of the storytelling, it advances the narrative. So that was the conceit, was, could we use these folk and traditional songs to explore the narratives of the past and of today? And it was a bit of a gamble, but it worked out, thank God. The tone of the film was sort of, a lot of it was actually heavily influenced by the tonality of the new folk scene in Ireland, which is slightly bleak, slightly horrific, moody, wintry. It's a scene that had its genesis in the dark winters of the recession in the late noughties, and it has this kind of gothic quality, that a surreal quality in the imagery that's used on the album covers and in the song lyrics. And I thought it would be amazing to make a film in that tonal world. So it's a sort of dark enough journey, as you've all seen. It's very moody and kind of horrific at times, but I think it's okay to make a film like that as long as you're left blinking in the light at the end, and that you come out of the tunnel and you hit something a bit uplifting or a bit optimistic.
Was that something that you had come across in the Cobblestone, or you know? I'm a bit of I'm not a bit. I'm an absolute music nerd myself. So, you know, Lancome was somebody that I had picked up on a little while back, and you know, Lisa O'Neill, and I'll be interested. Like, was when you started to discover these guys. Is that was that something that you'd done in the past? Or?
Yeah, well, they're kind of in the ether if you live around here. Like, this is the hub of where they all came from. And really that scene was born in the back room of the Cobblestone, where there was there's still a monthly singing session called The Night Before Larry Got Stretched, where older singers and younger singers who were interested in music came together, and they'd have these a cappella singing sessions. And that's what you see in the film. All those a cappella performances are just camera staged versions, and we're trying to be as close to the experience of being at The Night Before Larry Got Stretched as you can be, but just with a little bit of gloss and a bit of polish. But you know, Dublin's a small place, so I live in Grangegorman Upper, and there was a house full of punks across the street about 10 or 12 years ago, and one of them was learning the uilleann pipes, and I thought, geez, that's a funny thing for a punk to be doing. But he'd sit on a step in the sun, and he was a pleasant fella. We'd always say hello. And that was Ian Lynch from Lancome. He lived across the road, and I bumped into his brother Dara at something, and I said, geez, I'd love to work with you guys sometimes. And he said, well, do you want to meet up? And then we met up, and me and Ian were like, did you used to live across the road from me? Oh, yeah, I remember you. So you kind of felt like they were just heads in the neighbourhood. So I ended up doing the video for Cold Old Fire, which was the title track of their first album. And it was a self-penned song, a magnificently bleak but hopeful song. And if you look back at that video, that's kind of the birth of the North Circular universe in my mind. You know, you have Rady Pete singing Unaccompanied Shannos, you have Dark Forests, you have Moody Funeral, you have, you know, a mixture of old and young. You have the sort of timelessness, and also it's in that black and white Academy ratio world as well, where it's not quite clear if you're looking at today.
Yeah, that was something I suppose picked up early on, the drone of the uilleann pipe, and how Lancome, you know, there was just no separation between, you know, kind of progressive not techno, but electronic stuff that I was listening to, and I hear it again on Ian Lynch's on the signature tune for his the podcast, where he's using the stop. That tune, isn't it? It is.
And he has I think they're the drums from Running Free by Iron Maiden.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
I like the quote, those in power write the history, those who struggle write the songs. And I had to do my research, but can you tell the audience who was Frank Hart? That's the quote that's on the kind of slug line on the film.
Well, it's a funny one because I actually misremembered the quote. So Frank Hart was from Chapel Lizard, not so far from where I'm sitting now in Stoneybatter, and he was a great many things, but he was a songwriter and a performer and a great song collector as well. So he was a key figure in the preservation and the passing on of the folk tradition. And he wrote his own songs like The Girl from Cabra West and a few other kind of comic songs that you might know. But Frank said, those in power write the history, those who suffer write the songs. And I always thought that's the big slogan in the scene. And I thought it kind of epitomized the values of the film beautifully. But I remembered it as those in power write the history, those who struggle write the songs, as opposed to suffer. So I was like, Jesus, I'm after misremembering this lad's quote. That's not good.
Well, that's folk music.
About it a bit. Well, right, exactly that. So in the folk tradition, it's almost like a Chinese whisper as songs get passed on, lines get added, lines get taken away, things get tweaked. The air of one song gets put with the words of another. And I thought I felt from that point of view there was a legitimate value in me tweaking it. And I also thought it's better to struggle than to suffer, isn't it, Enda?
Absolutely. Like, gives you more agency. Yes.
100%.
Yeah,
but it also means to suffer. I mean, if you said it to a Dublin person, how you doing? Oh, I'm struggling. It means I'm suffering, doesn't it? You know, so it actually encompasses that meaning of suffering. But as you say, it suggests resistance and a bit of pushback, you know, which obviously tied in with the what the film has, you know.
Yeah.
I was interested. I went to after watching the film. I actually went to Dalymount a couple of weeks ago, and by mistake bought the ticket for the Bows End instead of the Drogheda End.
But I saw the man who came along and
Barry.
And yeah, do you want to just tell the audience? There's a little clip in the film from Dalymount Park.
Yeah, Barry Lenihan. So I'm a Bray Wanderers fan originally, but I've lived so near to Dalymount now. My son is a Bows fan, and I've become a Bows fan as well. So I took my son Danny along when he was 8, and we saw this remarkable character, Barry Bows Lenihan, as he's known, being the cheerleader. And my poor son is still at that age where he's very prudish about bad language, so he had his hands over his ears when he was talking about the Rovers. But I think what was amazing about Barry, I mean, we're very lucky to be there for that moment in the film, which was the first Rovers Bows game after COVID. And there'd been a whole debacle with Danny Mandrew leaving Bows and signing for Rovers. And then he scored the equaliser. And then that was Bows going 2-1 up. So the crowd had been wound up over a period of days, months, weeks and years to get to that heightened moment. But I think Barry he sort of epitomizes what's great about the North Circular Road, is that thing of it's so full of oddballs and mad people and weirdos, you know, that it's totally fine to just be yourself and do your thing, you know. And he's found this amazing niche, you know. And as a cheerleader, I saw the film in Paris, and I briefly knew with French subtitles, so I learned what the French was for if you hate the fucking Rovers, clap your hands is, which is obviously a highly useful phrase that should be in all the phrase books. But as gas, Barry came to the first screening in the Lighthouse, which is in Smithfield, near enough the first, and brought his mother and his father and his sisters, nieces and nephews, and there was a big family group, and they loved it. And we had a really good Q&A afterwards, and we had some sublime singing from Annie Hughes. But then just as we were all set to go home, Barry jumped up from the front row and he led the whole cinema in a chorus of "Give me a B, give me an O, give me an A." It was pretty amazing, I have to say.
That sounds good. Hey, I saw a quote where you said Dublin is the best city in the world to live in right now. What?
You know, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. That was a headline. The quote is, if you have somewhere to live that's affordable and secure, Dublin is one of the best cities in the world to live in right now. And I do think that's true, but that's a very, very big if. And the big divide in Dublin society right now, and indeed across Ireland, is this divide between those of us who are fortunate to have secure and affordable housing and those who aren't. So I kind of felt a little bit peeved at whoever put that in the headline, because they were leaving out a very important caveat. Having said that, even the housing crisis is an unbelievably toxic and problematic thing in Dublin at the moment, and you couldn't make a film about the way Dublin is right now without engaging with that narrative. And The Cobblestone was such a brilliant story because it brought together all the threads of the film, really. But generally speaking, I do feel quite positive and optimistic about Ireland and about Dublin.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know when you moved to Australia, but you know, I grew up in the 80s and it was a bleak and depressing.
Yes, so I went to London in 85 and moved to Australia in 96. So I spent the arse end of the 80s in England. Yes, and it was bleak.
Ireland in 85, 86, I remember it well. It was grim. Between the bombings and the murders, the unemployment, the repressive attitude, the lack of opportunity, the people like yourself who had energy and a bit of drive getting up and getting out. It was hard to be Irish. There was a real sense of shame and failure, you know, weighing down on their shoulders. And I think one of the greatest things about Dublin and Ireland now is I don't think that sense of failure is there anymore. And that's a huge
No.
thing, you know.
Yes, yes. I remember going to the tricycle in Kilburn to see Vincent Woods on the Black Pig's Dyke and coming out and thinking, you know, I've been believing this myself. And here was this wonderful piece with, and what impressed me so much was the actors were also musicians. A lot of those on that. What was I going to say? I think you really picked up, that kind of optimism and kind of I suppose it's what I like listening to Lancome and Ian Lynch, and you know, is that connection with the past, but it's you know, mongrelized and adapted in the way that, you know, we have done with folk music. What was it? What was the most enjoyable thing for you? Could you in making the film? Any moments that you?
You know, I think, if I'm truthful, the most enjoyable thing about this film has been seeing it in full cinemas with audiences, and just getting the response, the success it's had has been remarkable, and it wasn't what I was expecting. But I think for once in my life, my timing was good. It's usually brutal, but my timing kind of just fitted nicely. You know, on Colleen Kuhn, The Quiet Girl, had got people into the cinema and willing to take a chance on a slightly left field Irish film. Banshees of Inisherin came out, and we were one of the trailers in advance of that, and that felt like it was part of the same universe in a way. You know, trad music, you know, weird things happening in pubs, horrific narratives from the past, you know, trauma, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I genuinely, what this experience has reminded me is that films only exist in a cinema with an audience. If you watch it online, you're consuming content. But if you're together with fellow humans in a dark room and you've committed time and money and you've turned off your bloody phone and you're sitting there drinking it in and resonating off the people around you, that's what film is. So filmmaking happens in this room that I'm virtually in now, this cinema, and the audience are as much filmmakers as I am, because it only really exists when we're all together enjoying it. And if you look at the film, it's full of that, you know, like the joy of being a football match spectator, or the joy of listening to a musician in a pub, or the joy of protesting on the street. This communion, this active human togetherness is really something that I'm fascinated by, and it's a very profound thing, you know.
Cool, very, very well put. What's next? Any ideas in the pipeline?
It's a funny one, because I did a series about homeless people in Dublin since this film's come out, you know, so I almost feel like I'm already a project down the line from it.
Yeah.
I think the reality is, like, you can only do these kind of films every couple of years, and I'm a jobbing filmmaker who does TV and commercials, and, you know, I can't afford the luxury of spending time, but I am developing a couple of projects, certainly, that are maybe similar in the way that they are telling stories from the past, but through a lens of the present, and with a focus on things like landscape and architecture. I think that's my wheelhouse now. So there is a potential North Circular follow-up, but it won't be South Circular.
I was just quickly, what's the situation with the Cobblestone pub at the moment? Is it still endangered, or?
Well, yes and no. So the Dublin City Council rejected the application to redevelop it as a hotel. So to be fair to the much maligned politicians, they pretty much unanimously said, look, no, you can't do this. This is a step too far. So that protest worked. The Cobblestone is still the Cobblestone, and you can go there 7 nights a week and enjoy a really authentic but welcoming experience. So if you're ever in Dublin and you want to check the Cobblestone out, get down there, and recommend it. Having said that, it does exist in a precarious situation where the owners have already shown that they want to turn it into a hotel. So who knows what the future holds? And in a way, that's a metaphor for so many people's existence in Dublin right now. It's great, but some unknown shadowy rich person could just turn off the tap anytime and really radically change your life. So there's something very problematic about that. But look, for now, let's just enjoy it while it's there.
Great. Luke McManus, Goramila Moigot, thanks very much for giving us the time, and good luck with North Circular and the rest of the projects.
Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate it.